protest voters. We aren't undecided swing voters. We are indecisive independents. We are very decisive libertarians. And our votes are rightfully ours. The party of principle is made up of people of principle who vote on principle, not fear. Thank you. All right, first, we have a couple speakers, local. We have the Georgia State coordinator for the Jorgensen campaign. He's a really smart guy. You're going to love him. His name's Logan Alexander Smith. Give him a hand.
How's everybody doing today? Man, it is so great to look out on a crowd of people who have looked at the problems that are going on in our country today and have decided to respond not with apathy but with action. As we were going into this year, I got a lot of curveballs thrown at me. If you told me a year ago when I was convalescing at home with a muscular disorder that today I would be out here stumping for a presidential candidate, I would not have believed you. But then COVID happened, and I saw how our government responded. And George Floyd happened, and I saw how our government responded. And for the first time, I saw how much danger there was in one way of thinking, one way of doing things, having control of an entire nation, of all the different cultures and peoples who live here, of all of the land. One way of doing things governs the whole thing, and that is the two-party system. I listened to them talk, and all that I heard were the candidates attempting to shapeshift into whatever they thought was going to get them out from under that pressure without doing anything to change it. And then I heard Joe talk in Atlanta, and I heard Joe talk about actual, tangible things we can do to get control of law enforcement and bring it back to what we want it to be and let good cops do their jobs. And I saw Spike on the front lines of these protests, not hiding in a hoodie, on camera, in the thick of it, doing what needed to be done. And as I saw them, I thought of a Bible verse that I was made to memorize before I could marry my wife. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 11. When I was a child, I reasoned as a child, and I thought as a child. And when I became a man, I put away childish things. And as I thought of that verse, something in me snapped. Because I realized for the first time how childish this two-party system is. How childish it is to only have two opinions on everything. If you think the best way to address your opponent in a civilized debate is with words like nasty or deplorable, you're speaking like a child. And if you think that the best idea to get people to behave the way you want them to is to lock them in a corner for decades until they behave correctly, then you are reasoning like a child. And if you think that all the myriad of things that a person can think, the entire width and breadth of human imagination can somehow be best represented by two parties backed by corrupt corporate money, then you are thinking like a child. My friends, this past July, constitutional America turned 233 years old. It is time for us to grow up. This November, I want you to go to the voting booth with your heads held high and your feet planted. And I want you to put away childish things. Thank you.
Keep it going for Logan. All right, next we have a lifelong resident of the Chattanooga area. He's a 38-year-old bookkeeper and restaurant consultant, and he's our candidate running for the East Ridge City Council. Please welcome my friend David Tyler.
Thanks, Keith. Thanks, Angela, once again for this event. Hi, Chattanooga. What's going on? My name is David Tyler, and I'm also a member of the Jo Jorgensen fan club, just like all of you. Today, I am in a great mood I got to vote on Thursday for 2 Libertarians, right? The first Libertarian I voted for was me for the East Ridge City Council. And then I cast my vote for the adult, Jo Jorgensen, for president, and Jeremy Spike Cohen for vice president. The most successful gaslighting operation in America today is that the Republican and Democrat parties have convinced the American people that they are.
The government letdown of our soldiers does not begin with health care. It starts from the time they enlist. There are soldiers currently deployed who weren't even born when our war on terror began. The U.S. spends more on military than the next 7 countries combined, and we are in about 160 different countries around the globe. And what do we have to show for it? In the last 20 years alone, 500,000 people have died in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Pakistan, including 250,000 civilians. Those are fathers and mothers and siblings and children who will never return home. In every election, candidates promise more peace, but they only deliver more war. If I'm elected president, my first official act will be to bring the troops home. I want to turn America into one giant Switzerland, armed and neutral. We absolutely have to have a strong military to defend our shores, to defend our borders, but we need to stop meddling in every country around the world and become good neighbors with our world neighbors. The military budget is far from the only example of how the government has misdirected our economy. The IRS taxes Americans at every turn, and the tax system is so complicated that only those who can afford personal accountants and tax lawyers can even navigate the code. And that same IRS that taxes us to death probes into every personal financial decision we make, deciding how much we need to spend on taxes. Meanwhile, the government itself accumulates more debt. Now, half the people think we need to increase military spending. The other half of the politicians in Washington think we need to increase domestic spending. So what's our bipartisan compromise? They simply increase all spending. As your president, my veto pen is going to need a lot of extra ink. Runaway spending is also made possible by the Federal Reserve. When the federal government isn't able to raise taxes, it simply prints more money without any backing at all. Since the Fed was created over a century ago, the American dollar has lost 96% of its value. We need to reduce regulations on cryptocurrency and allow that and any other currency to end the market. As your president, I will first audit and then end the Federal Reserve. I will eliminate the IRS and work with Congress towards eliminating the federal income tax altogether. It's time to move the money out of the government sector and back to the people who earned it. Politicians and bureaucrats don't know what you need. You do. And when it comes to cutting spending, we can't take any options off the table. I would encourage baseline budgeting, which assumes that rather than assuming we increase our budget every year, we start at zero, and then we decide what's vital. It's time for the government to balance its checkbook the same way American families do. Given the challenges we face as a country, it's easy to feel like the change I'm talking about just can't happen. But I believe it can because I believe in you. I believe in the individuals who make up our great country. I see America through my grandmother's eyes, a place where the rights of the individual are greater than the power of government, a place where liberty means minimum government and maximum freedom. a place where the American dream isn't a dream at all. It's real and it's right there in front of you because you made it happen. As I ask for your vote this November, it's not because I'm asking you to cast a vote for me. I'm asking you to cast a vote for you because you know best what your family needs. You know best how to spend your money. You know best what's best for you. Thank you so much. And I would love to take some questions. We have Kate here.
All right, so unfortunately tonight I am going to be the libertarian that tells you what to do. So if you will come over here, if you have a question for Mama Jo, just come over here, single file line. I am going to request that we leave it to one question per person, and we are going to try to get to as many questions as we possibly can. She is a lecturer, so she does like to speak a lot on a subject. So we'll try to make it brief and get to everybody, but unfortunately I can't guarantee that. So we'll go ahead and get started.
My generation deserves better from elected officials. If you become president, how will you make sure elected officials remain civil and respectful?
That's a good question. And by the way, here's a young lady who is going to try to put civility back into politics and try to get Trump and Biden to sign a no bullying pledge. So we'll see if they do that in Nashville. Part of the reason that there's so much incivility is because everything runs through the government. So let me give you an example. Let's say that you want your kid to go to a school with prayer and your neighbor doesn't. What you have to do right now is you have to battle it out in government. You each pick your own candidate, you each donate money to that candidate, you get all your friends to vote for that candidate, you put out yard signs, and then on election day, one of you is going to win and one of you is going to lose, and you're both going to have to live under a one-size-fits-all. The way the libertarian system is you get to keep your resources, and if you choose to send your kid to a school with prayer, you can do that. And if your neighbor chooses to send his kid to a school without prayer, he can do that too, because we think that you should be able to vote with your feet or vote with your dollars every time. And let me just ask you, think about this. What if we all had to go to the ballot box and all vote? Are we going to all be vegetarians, or are we all going to be steak eaters? We would have this dissent that we have now. And you might think that's kind of extreme, but think about it. Right now, it's up to a vote whether you have vaccines, whether or not you can homeschool your kid, what kind of health care you can have, what kind of retirement. Everything goes to the government. So, of course, we're all at odds with each other. And of course the politicians are at odds with each other because there's a lot of power and money. We've got to get the power and money out of the politicians' hands, put it into our hands so we can live peacefully with each other, each making our own decision and not battling it out with everybody else to come up with a one-size-fits-all. So thank you for that.
What would you do about all the companies that are causing all this pollution, the ones that are really bad,
That is a great question. I'm sorry, Kate, this is going to be a long answer too, because the environment is really important to me. And this is one of the places where it is so misunderstood, because people are going to the government for more help. I was in a third-party debate with a woman, well, several people, but a woman who was running for the Socialist Department. And she actually said the largest polluter on this earth is the U.S. government Department of Defense. And then she went on to talk about how horrible corporations were to the environment. And I just wanted to ask her, do you realize what you're saying? These are the people causing the problem, and you're going to go to them to fix it? That makes no sense. So let me give you two examples here. I just met two wonderful women. By the way, if you are interested in the environment at all, I encourage you to check out this group. It's called PERC, P-E-R-C. They're based out of Montana. And they told me the story of how in Montana there was a beautiful forest, and the government was going to give a timber company the right to chop down the trees and use it for timber. So a group of neighbors said, you know what, we like the forest. How about we'll bid against the timber company? And they won. And then they said, uh-oh, now what do? We have to raise the money. Well, it didn't surprise me at all that they were able to raise the money within 2 weeks. So within 2 weeks, individuals working together were able to outbid the timber company and keep the wonderful environment. But there's this downside, or sad ending to the story. After that happened, the Montana legislature passed a law so that would never happen again, so that the timber companies would always win out, because that's how government works. They cater to their special interests. They cater to the people who give them bribes, campaign contributions. So we can't put the environment in the hands of politicians. And one other story too, like I said, the environment is something that really interests me. Remember the Gulf oil spill? A few years back, and everybody said, see, we need the government, because of these awful corporations who pollute the land. What they don't realize is that the government gave them a liability cap. So in a free market, that company would have had to have gone to an insurance company, and the insurance company would have either said, nope, it's too risky, we're not going to insure you, or the insurance company would have said, okay, it's risky, but we'll insure you if we can come out every week, every month, and do spot checks, whatever, because we don't want to pay out a claim. So you've got a profit mode of taking care of the environment. And that's what we need to do. And all you have to do is look at a globe to see wherever there's bigger government, there's more pollution. Wherever there's less government, there's less pollution. And the last people I would trust the environment to would be any kind of bureaucrat or politician. So thanks. My next answer will be shorter.
Well, before you get there, quick announcement. If you're getting eaten up by the bloodsuckers, and I don't mean the politicians, but the mosquitoes, we do have some bug spray that you can spray yourselves down with at the tables back here. So help yourself. All right, next question. Who's got it? Well, come over. I promise I'm not going to bite. I'm not a mosquito.
Hi, Dr. Jorgensen.
Hey, how are
Thank
you?
you for taking my question. What's your take on the Native Americans protesting their indigenous land? Would you step in against the corporate industrial complex?
I would. The U.S. government has treated the Native Americans just abhorrently. I think we need to live up to our treaties. And what's really, and I have actually talked to somebody who worked at the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and he said this is very complicated because different tribes in different states want different things. Whereas some tribes do want to be left alone, others, want to be involved in the government. So I think we need to, as libertarians, we honor our contract, and I think that's a contract that we need to honor. So thanks. I'm a teacher, but I can come up with short answers sometimes. Hey.
Good afternoon. So from one professor to another, you've seen how the education system is manipulated by the Department of Education through its offering of student loans.
Yes.
How would you address that? Because we know that a significant chunk of debt is attributable to the student loans.
Yeah, so first of all, my boss wouldn't be happy if I didn't point out I'm a senior lecturer, not a professor. The students don't know any difference, but the administration does. So, and this is one example. When people ask me why I'm running for office, I tell them because government is, again, too big, too bossy, too nosy, too intrusive. But then I followed up with the worst part is they end up hurting the very people they try to help. And here's one example. Sure, it was a challenge to get through college and to pay for it. So the government comes in and says, well, let's help people. So they flood the market with money. Anybody who knows anything about economics knows that when you flood the market with money, prices are going to go up. And that's exactly what happened. The first thing we got to do, if you're digging yourself into a hole, the first thing you need to do is stop digging. So we need to get the government out of it. We need to, we can talk about the Department of Education another time, but they've done more to hurt schooling than help it. But first of all, for the people who have the loans, we need to make them bankruptable just like any other obligation. Notice how the politicians say, oh, it's, the corporations, we don't care if they don't get our money, but we have to get our money. And we're actually looking into other alternatives. But I will say this. I am not for free college because people who go to college make more money than people who don't. The latest figures, it's something like $1 million, and there's no reason for truck drivers and electricians and cashiers to be paying for the college education of doctors and lawyers and accountants. If you're going to be making that extra money, then there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to pay for it. So thanks.
For the record, I'm just an adjunct, so I understand.
A friend of mine introduced me to the Libertarian Party this year, and he died recently in a motorcycle accident before he even got the opportunity to vote. But
Wow.
one of the things that was very near and dear to him and a lot of our friends is the Second Amendment and the part where it says shall not be infringed. So what's your stand on the ATF and ATF or not?
Well, yeah, with the ATF, as far as I can, well, first of all, what does alcohol have to do with tobacco and firearms? Yes, I realize the history, but first of all, as far as I can see, the only real need for the ATF has to do with finding bombs, like people bombing the government. So let's take that function out, put it within the military, put it within the federal government, and get rid of the other functions. Now, we can go through crime statistics on guns, how 95% or whatever of the shootings, of the killings that have been done have been in gun-free zones, that the way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun, and that's what statistics show, that the state of Florida and other states, as soon as they allowed carry conceal, that homicides went down because people could protect themselves. So I would get rid of every gun law in the last 100 years and keep the egregious red flag laws from being passed, because that's basically having your constitutional right taken away without a fair trial. So thanks.
And you know when the 2A gets brought up, I always like to follow up with this question. Mama Jo, do you own an AK-47?
I do, but I've never shot it. Bill Clinton back in the early 90s said we couldn't have that gun anymore, so the first thing I did was I went out and bought one so it'd be grandfathered in. But I've never shot it. It's just, the government needs to learn about something called reactance theory, which when Tipper Gore, do you remember Tipper Gore with Dee Snider and the whole Parents Music Resource Council, and they put the little, see, here's a case where government, and it hurts the very people it tries to help. Tipper Gore is like, you know what? We've got all this bad language and everything else in these CDs. We got to do something about it. So they put stickers on it. And so what happens? After the stickers now, all the teenage kids are like, oh, that's the one I want to buy. And then use of explicit language went up in kids. So you tell somebody they can't have something, they tend to want it more, so.
You've been quoted at, oh, that's right. That echo was weird. Okay.
Oh.
You've been quoted as saying when you become president, you're going to get rid of the minimum wage.
Yeah.
How do you believe that's going to help the people in minimum wage jobs?
Yeah, the fact that first of all, they will have jobs, because research is clear. There's been research since the 1960s, very clear, that if you raise the minimum wage or have a minimum wage at all, the people it hurts are the poor and the more minorities who cannot get on that first rung. And first of all, most people who are paid minimum wage are not being paid minimum wage a year later. That's just a way to get the job started. And if you recall, recently we had all across the country people working at fast food restaurants demanding minimum wage. So what did the fast food restaurants do? They started bringing in automation, because if companies can't afford it, they will find another way. And I think a lot of these people would probably would rather have a $12 or $13 an hour job than to have a theoretical $15 an hour job that they can't have, because now it's all been automated because it can't be afforded. So once again, letting the free market work out prices itself is the best way to do it, and it helps protect internships, apprenticeships, and so forth. There are just so many exceptions that people could be helped by not having that minimum wage. And by the way, notice all the politicians who are passing these laws, they all have free interns working for them. So maybe they should follow their own rule. Thanks.
Y'all, step up, please. I won't bite.
Good evening. So there seems to be, criminal justice has been a major factor of your campaign, and there seems to be a practice where a person will commit an action, and then both the state and the federal government will bring charges against that person for the single action. Is that a violation of the double jeopardy clause, and if so, what would you do to combat that practice?
Well, I don't know if that's a violation of double jeopardy or not. I'm not a lawyer, but I do believe, I do know that all crime is local, whether it's whether it's assault, robbery, burglary, whatever. So crime should be at a local level, and it should be up to the local police, the mayor, city council, voters to let them decide how to do it, and that we need to get government out of this local policing thing so that there's not even a body to even charge somebody a second time. Because, you know, unlike the people who, the other major parties who are running for office, I trust the communities to handle their policing policies on their own without getting involved. Thanks.
Hello.
Hey.
I have a question about the discord in our country today. There are lots of things around our nation that people are fighting and for different views. As president, what would you do to ensure that we had our views heard, but yet everyone was safe at the same time?
Well, the way I would do that is reduce government so that they didn't have to have their views heard, that they could, as I say, vote with their feet or vote with their dollars every day. Like, for instance, take the mask policy. Right now, there are a lot of people who say, yes, we have to have masks. A lot of people who say, no, we don't. But again, we've got a one-size-fits-all. Wouldn't it be great if, you know, well, let me back up. There's a myth out there that if the government doesn't do it, it doesn't get done. And we saw with the mask policy that that's not true. When Walmart said, we don't care what the law is, we don't care where the store is, you're going to wear a mask if you go in our store. And many stores followed suit. So wouldn't it be great if you got to vote with your feet every day and you decide, okay, today I'm going to vote for a mask, I'm going to go shop at Walmart or one of the many other stores, and if that day you voted against a mask, you could go to one of these other stores. So you don't have to let your voice be heard by government. You just have to let your voice be heard by the stores you shop at. And I can tell you that stores are much more catering to what you want because they want your business. The government doesn't have to cater to you at all. And in fact, they typically don't care what people like. So I want to put you in the hands of people who care what you want. Thanks.
We've got time for like 2 or 3 questions. Go on. Yeah, come on. Line up, y'all. Come on. I know you don't like people telling you what to do, but.
Hi, thank you. Should I hold it? Or?
No, I've got it.
Okay. I have kind of a sensitive question. There's no argument that there is a huge epidemic of the exploitation of our children and our minors in this country. Can you speak to what you would do to protect the freedoms of the adults who consent and wish to work and in the adult entertainment industry without fear from the without fear from criminalization from the government, while also protecting our most vulnerable?
Yes. So this is about a 3-part question that would take me about 10 minutes to answer fully. But let me mention, first of all, I never want federal overreach from the federal government to the states. And a lot of what you're talking about, victimless crimes, those are at the state level, and we need libertarians at all levels of government to protect everybody's rights. So some of that I basically wouldn't be able to handle. But let me mention the danger of getting the federal government involved. All we have to do is look at, for instance, in the 1990s with Elizabeth Dole, many of you may not realize this, but before the 90s, there were many different states had different drinking ages. And then what Elizabeth Dole did as National Transportation Secretary, she took our money, all the money from all the different states, and then she held our money hostage and said, hey, do you want your money back for your highway funds? You're going to have to raise your drinking age. And that's why now the drinking age is 21. Now, we can have a debate on whether that's a better drinking age, and maybe it is. But I would suggest that that's not up to the federal government. It's up to the state to decide. And so if we get in there, if the federal, and let me give you one other example, the Department of Education. We've got the Department of Education who comes in with a one-size-fits-all, you have to have Common Core, you have to have these requirements. Well, the needs of people in rural Appalachia, much different than the needs of people in downtown New York City or different than the people in Chattanooga. Locally, people should be able to make their own decisions. Right now, there's somewhere between $500 and $1,000 for each student going to the federal government, and they're not getting much back. And wouldn't that be great if the states could just, and localities could keep their money and spend it how they wanted to? Maybe we wouldn't have teachers spending money on, Kleenex boxes and crayons. So what I would do is, at the federal level, I would decriminalize all of that, and I would let out anybody who's in a federal prison, and I would urge the states to follow suit. And if it got to the part to where people's rights were being violated, such as we saw George Wallace standing on the steps of University of Alabama not letting black students go in, if it got to that to where people's constitutional rights were being taken away, we would definitely look into that, because this is America, we're supposed to be free. So thanks.
I just wanted to know your thoughts on the legality of statewide and national gambling.
That there is no victim, so there is no crime. And by the way, these states who outlaw gambling are gambling with the lottery system. Again, actions speak louder than words. I mean, yeah, Wall Street. Good point.
I just had a question regarding the release of victimless criminals from prison. What are your plans on rehabilitation and keeping them from increasing our homeless population?
A lot of that, again, is a state level. And if you look at Orlando, the city of Orlando has made great strides. But if we reduce taxes, if we get rid of the federal income tax, each family is going to have an extra $12,000 a year to spend on things, so they can buy more services. They can, go out to the restaurant more often. They can have massage therapy. They can, go out to the movies more often. And that would help invigorate the economy and bring them into the economy, because, the money that's kind of going into a sinkhole right now in Washington could be spent locally, because people would be keeping the money instead of sending it to Washington. So that would be the first half. The other people who are left behind, I would encourage the states and localities to look at the state of Orlando and some other places that have helped. Thanks.
We have time for one more.
Okay.
Not long.
Okay.
Question.
Well, good. So if I can't answer it, I'll just say I'm not allowed to answer it.
Give it a whirl.
My question is kind of a two-part question. I am a teacher. I am proud to be a teacher, and I'm very passionate about my teaching. But unfortunately, I see a lot of educators that are becoming burnt out, and they're not giving their best effort, and maybe they're in teaching for the wrong reasons. And labor unions, teaching labor unions, are allowing them to keep their job. And I just want to know how you feel about just the flaws in our education system and labor unions.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm not against unions. If people want to voluntarily organize, that's fine. What I'm against is when unions can then hold their employer hostage. And we see that a lot with education. What I can do at the federal level is first encourage Congress to defund the Department of Education and get rid of it, so we've got that bureaucracy gone, so that it puts the power back into local localities. And then again, let's fix that at a local level because that is a local issue. And the last thing you want is the federal government trying to fix that because look at what they did with the Department of Education, look at what they did with student loans. So the best I can do is get the government out of it so that people can make their own decisions at a local level. And hopefully, you know, if you vote for people at a local level, you know more what you're getting. You have no control over the people in Washington. So if I get the people in Washington out, then you can deal with the people locally and get help there. So thank you so much. Thanks.
Keep it going for Mama Jo. Isn't she incredible? I promised you she was. Keep it going for your speakers and your local representation here with the Libertarian Party of Tennessee. They are incredible. And the volunteers that had blood, sweat, and I guarantee there were tears to get her here and to get us here. What I'm going to be asking you tonight is probably a hard sell. And we are towards the end of the campaign, and a lot of people think, you know, we've got plenty of funds. Well, if you're a libertarian, you know that's not true. We have integrity, we have values, we have principles, we have the best quality candidates on the ballot. What we don't have is the bank account. So, you know that it takes money for the world to go around. It also takes money for those wheels to go round. So I'm here to ask you, can I have some gas money? We need to get Jo in front of as many people as we possibly can before November 3rd so she can change hearts, change minds, and gain those votes, right? So we can get our liberty back peacefully. So I've got Kenna here with my beautiful Jo bucket, and if you've got a contribution of $50 or less in cash, just go ahead and pop it in that bucket. We'd really, really appreciate it. It'll get us to our next stops. If you have a contribution of $50 or more, I am going to have to ask that you fill out a form legally because the FEC. Boo, right? And if you would like to stay socially distant or, you know, and not everybody has cash on them, go to jo20.com/give. That's jo20.com/give. It's right there on the bus and right here too. So I've made it as easy as possible. They call me Shakedown Kate in Texas because I always want your money, and I'm not any different here in Tennessee, sorry. So yes, if you will give a contribution, you can give it to me. And you know what? There is one special person, a new friend of mine, Ryan. You probably all know him. He has a few words that he would like to say. So I'm going to give it to Ryan real quick. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ryan Jenkins, and I am a 7th grade student at Saudi Daisy Middle School. Many people ask me why I am so involved in politics when I am not old enough to vote. Well, it's simple. I know the people we elect today will affect my future. In 2017, I became a Libertarian. I was excited and ready to make a change. Since I've joined the LP, I have understood why we need people like Jo and Spike in the White House. I am sick and tired of the media bias and them failing to educate America on all the options we have in each election. Well, today that has to change. That is why I am proud to be supporting Jo Jorgensen and Spike Cohen. It is not every day we can elect two awesome people. They have a passion we need to put in the White House. I hope you will stand with us as we get Jo elected. To have a Libertarian president, we need you all to get out to vote, but please also educate friends and family about Jo and make sure they get out to vote. We also need funding. I hope and encourage you all to donate today. I don't want you to feel like you have to donate some big amount. I'm being honest when I say any amount helps. So if you donate below $50, we can take it in cash and check today here at the event, and you can donate any amount at www.jo20.com. Although I don't plan on running for president myself until about 2052, I will be making my voice known in the 2020 presidential election. Thank you, and let's do this. If anyone wants one.
I'm back. Yeah, you can't get rid of me. All right, so like he was saying, yard signs. If you don't have a yard sign, you would like one, grab one, take one. There are also door hangers and rack cards. Please, please give them to your friends, give them to your family. Explain why you are so passionate about this incredible woman. If you would like to take a selfie with Jo, please